The How to Train Your Dragon trilogy has to be one of the most impactful and meaningful movie trilogy I have ever seen. I will always have a certain love for the Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Kung Fu Panda, and Shrek trilogies, but there's just something so awe-inspiring about the world this film trilogy built and the continuous themes of living in a world where Vikings and dragons exist. The very smart and mature storytelling each movie tells, which all feels like a natural progression from one film to the next. These rich characters with all interesting dynamics between one another, and while some less focused than others, all feel like they matter in the trilogy. Yes, even these band of chuckle fucks, but we'll get to them later. For now, I want to talk about the very first movie of the How to Train Your Dragon series, the one that started it all to form this inspiring and fantastic universe filled with the endless stories to tell that simply cannot be replaced.
This is the reason why humanity was a mistake. This is why we should all be killed.
Honestly, I'm not even surprised at this point. I think that this can be unsaid that this A, did not need to be made, B, did not want to be made, and C, is why animation is dying. These companies making live action remakes have this fantastical idea that animation needs to be replaced for a more realistic and a more mature form of storytelling. I feel as though live action remakes should only be made if there's something drastically wrong with the original movie and a lot of the animation is hindering the movie from being better. I will use my one and only example as to what should be remade, whether it be live action or retold while still using animation. Brother Bear. Brother Bear's opening act is an extremely grounded and smart way to tackle the story as we explore how these two brothers lose their surrogate father and have conflicting ideas about what the spirits that they believed in are. It's an amazing start to a movie and has me hooked for what is to come for Kenai and Denahi's character, and he gets turned into a bear.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's no punchline. It's not a joke.
And it's not that him turning into a bear is a terrible idea. I think it's a very symbolic way to naturally progress his character to believe in the spirits once again as he understands what the bear of love truly means. But along the way, there's just an insurmountable amount of goofy and dumb shenanigans that take a lot away from the actual good parts about the movie. So if they retold the story into live action or even just reanimated and rewrote a lot of things in the movie, focusing more on the cultural aspect of the movie, then it could be something genuinely fantastic. Other than that, I really do not see a big animated movie such as How to Train Your Dragon needing to be remade into live action. I should actually start talking about the movie now instead of just going on a weird tangent, but listen, I really want to talk about Brother Bear. It's so good, but it's so bad. But I just want to talk about how cool it would be if they actually remade it. Like, think of the possibilities, you know? The bears would suck, but just think about it. Think about it. So, without further ado, here's my start to my How to Train Your Dragon retrospective video trilogy. I should probably actually work on that title. So I think with my hatred over the live action remake, we need to talk about exactly why this doesn't work in the slightest. Sure, I believe that the VFX team is skilled enough to make well-made CGI dragons, along with enhancing the environments using CGI, along with all the other things that are hard to do practically or take away the immersion if it was practical. But there's one simple problem with this: the character designs. How to Train Your Dragon takes place in a Viking society called Berk. You know, snows 9 months a year, hails the other 3, all that. And in Berk lives a society of big, meaty Vikings. The reason why a core part of this narrative works is because of how radically different all the other Vikings are from Hiccup. And this is especially apparent when we look at his dad, Stoic. I really don't think any amount of VFX or costume work can replicate the visual language this movie has by having these hulking giants downplay and disregard this tiny little Hiccup. All of the other Vikings, even his own father, laugh and mock at all of this.
You just gestured to all of me.
This is a very small visual that the movie has that definitely goes a long way. These Vikings having such a stereotypical design to them is effective for showing off how stereotypical their ideals are, and how it's up to Hiccup to learn how to change their philosophy of senseless killing for the sake of survival. And I personally love how the animation is used to translate what the dragons are feeling through their expressions and movements. I mean, a good part of the movie is spent with Hiccup slowly learning to understand Toothless. He's observing how he acts and trying to connect to him rather than trying to communicate with him. This is where the animation in the movie absolutely shines. these circumstances where Hiccup learns to understand dragons further by watching Toothless mimic whatever Hiccup does, showing just how harmless he and other dragons can really be. And I think this helps the message on how dragons have never been the issue, but the Vikings. We see how Toothless mimics Hiccup, showing us that the dragons have a more monkey see, monkey do mindset. I'm sorry for not coming up with a better analogy. Dragons only kill because Vikings started the violence. So when Hiccup approaches Toothless more passively and offers him food, Toothless offers food back. When Hiccup smiles, Toothless smiles back. When Hiccup starts to draw, so does Toothless. This scene where Hiccup avoids this silly little doodle a dragon made is extremely impactful. I know, it sounds insane, but hear me out. Seeing Hiccup slowly learn how Toothless reacts to Hiccup as he moves through the drawings further strengthens both of their abilities to trust one another. And when Hiccup reaches his hand out, Toothless hesitates, but Hiccup doesn't. And this is where they can start growing close. All of this is done without a single word spoken. A sequence that simply cannot be recreated into live action. So let me ask you this. Do you think the first time Hiccup meets Toothless, Toothless draws with Hiccup, the discovery of the dragon's lair, along with the many scenes of dragons flying through the air, can be created in live action while still holding the same weight to it? I'll let you answer in the comments, because I really need engagement. But for now, I need to talk about Hiccup in this movie, because from the very first scene in the movie, it is already established what this character is all about. Through his narration and interaction with Fishlegs and other characters, he keeps talking about how he needs to kill dragons, how it's something that he's been working for his whole life. But there's one subtlety with his dialogue in the beginning. Nowhere is he saying that this is something he wants. He's never said something along the lines of, this is something I've dreamt of, or this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. Instead, he goes on about how this is what Vikings do and how killing a dragon will prove that he's one of them. But he never refers to himself. This is all because of how the other Vikings treat him. He's lived in such a single-minded society his whole life and been marked for being something other than a Viking that he believes that he can't just simply be himself. He feels the need to be someone he's not. The Vikings even tell him to stop doing this, but it's not in such a negative way, because if he can't be a Viking, then who is he supposed to be? That question is answered when he meets the dreaded Night Fury.
Night Fury. Speed unknown. Size unknown. The unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. Never engage this dragon. Your only chance, hide and pray it does not find you.
So when Hiccup has this dragon captured and helpless, he hypes himself up to finally kill a dragon. Finally be a Viking. But he didn't. He looked into the supposed monster's eyes, fully willing to accept its death, and decided that something about this just wasn't right. When he cuts Toothless free and they stare into each other's eyes, the roles are reversed. Hiccup knew that this was where he was going to die. And then, the dragon takes off. They were the first of their kind to not go for the kill. I think this is a good time to talk about just how perfectly crafted the relationship with Toothless and Hiccup was. They both reflect each other in more ways than one, not just based on their personalities, but what they both represent. They represent the change that was necessary for the world that was built around them. Hiccup is the Viking that refused to kill a dragon, while Toothless is the dragon to show mercy for a race that didn't deserve it. Dragonkind was only forced to pillage and steal from Berk to protect their lives from their leader, whereas Berk saw this as an act of war and started the violence between dragons and Vikings. So dragons did the only thing that was necessary and defended themselves. So when Toothless stared into the eyes of Hiccup, he could see that this wasn't like any of the other Vikings. Hence why he didn't go for the kill. As the movie goes on, their bond becomes more and more clear. They both need each other because they both can be seen as the outliers of the race after their first encounter. So the only thing that they can do is understand the truths behind Vikings and dragons, and how both races can change for the better. The constant back and forth between Hiccup growing closer to Toothless and going through dragon training was extremely well done. When Hiccup starts to learn more passive ways to tame and subdue dragons through Toothless, he does the same in dragon training, making the people respect him more. And it's not like he's doing it for attention, because as we can see, he tries to dip out at every chance to go see Toothless again. He's just using new strategies to tame dragons so he doesn't resort to killing them, so that when the time came where he was forced to kill a dragon, that maybe, just maybe, they will understand just how wrong they are. But to no surprise,
I'm not one of them. They're not what we think they are. We don't have to kill them.
I said stop the fight!
When the nightmare begins to go on a rampage, Toothless charges in, doing everything he can to protect Hiccup. He doesn't even care that all the Vikings can see him, because he too knows that something needs to be done. Something to prove that dragons can coexist with the Vikings and learn to trust each other, even for a little bit. This is the bond between Toothless and Hiccup. The friendship that can change history. But there was still one thing in the way.
Sorry, Dad.
Stoic is the leader of the Vikings. Absolutely nothing happens on this island without Stoic knowing. This strong, confident leader who everybody follows and thinks that his words are absolute. Everybody except his own son. The relationship between these two is extremely heartbreaking. Stoic keeps going on about how Hiccup needs to be a Viking for his true respect, but he doesn't even realize how this is negatively affecting Hiccup. Because this sets in Hiccup's entire goal for wanting to kill a dragon at the beginning of the film. Not to just become one of them, but to gain the respect of his own father. So you'd think that when Stoic learns about Hiccup's dragon training, there'd be tons of stuff to talk about, right? Well, not exactly. You can tell just how happy Stoic is about Hiccup's dragon training and how this is something he's been waiting for ever since he was born. But when they actually get a chance to talk, there was utter silence. That's when you realize just how broken this relationship is. Hiccup can't talk about himself because he's not prideful of his success in his training, whereas Stoic can't say anything because there's nothing to say to him. He's already got his wish. His son is finally a Viking in his mind. So why doesn't he say anything? Well, that's because the idea of his son becoming a Viking was far more important to him than actually connecting with his son. There are some arguments for the scene where they could actually start opening up to each other about Hiccup's mother and Stoic talking about what he was like and all that, which, yeah, I can totally see that, but then it wouldn't have hit you as hard as to just how dysfunctional these two are as father and son. It would have made it easier for Hiccup to talk about Toothless and his want to not kill dragons. If that happened, then this scene wouldn't have hurt as much.
You're not a Viking. You're not my son.
Honestly, I don't know what can be said about this scene. The imagery of this child standing up to the strongest Viking in all of Berk about how wrong he is about dragons.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
How they don't even argue like father and son. The fantastic performances in both of these voice actors. The rise in anger from both Stoic and Hiccup. And then, the aftermath, where Stoic is taken aback about what he's just said. Only to look ahead, knowing fully well that it can't be taken back now. This is an extremely hard scene to watch because you know that there's no way that Stoic will ever listen. Because then that would show how wrong the most respected leader in all of Berk is, leading into the Vikings begin to question his leadership. Stoic has never acted like a father to Hiccup this whole movie, so why would he start now? It's not until Hiccup realizes that words alone can't convince Stoic, so he has to show him what he means by what he's saying, as he rides the dragons with fellow Vikings that he begins to understand. Dragons can coexist with Vikings, if we gave them the chance that Stoic never gave his son, to be himself.
I'm sorry. For everything.
Yeah, me too.
I'm proud to call you my son.
This is when Stoic stops being the stoic leader who believes that what he says is absolute, and starts being a father. One thing that I didn't notice until my rewatch is how Stoic says, "I did this," when he believes his son was killed. These same words that Hiccup said when he refused to kill Toothless.
I did this.
Both of them realizing the mistakes that they have made. That's when the relationship as father and son can finally begin. Stoic, Hiccup, and Toothless are by far the best characters in this movie. But what about the other characters? Surely they can't be that bad.
Your butts are getting bigger. We thought you were a dragon.
Not that there's anything wrong with a dragon-esque figure.
Yeah, so this has always been the main outlier of all three movies, according to everybody. This band of Viking geeks that always take up roughly a third of the movie, where a lot of people kind of hate them. Well, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, these guys and gals kind of suck in the second and third movie. But we're not in the second and third movie, are we?
No.
I will say that they aren't quite as bad in this movie than in future movies, because they have a more of a narrative purpose here. See, the whole point of this ragtag group of kids is that they serve a minor obstacle for Hiccup to overcome. Since they all have to go dragon training together, Hiccup has to make sure that he doesn't look suspicious to them, keeping a secret safe about Toothless. That and in order to gain their trust at the end where they all rode dragons together, he had to be the one to show them that there are ways to actually tame dragons instead of killing them. Which is another big reason why he had to be the one to win each match. Not to just keep appearances up with the other Vikings, but to gain the group's trust so that when we get to them learning how to train dragons, it's infinitely more believable because we spend a lot of time with the group interacting and training with Hiccup. Along with that, I think having Vikings close and around his age and size is great, because when they actually start loosening up around Hiccup, it makes his accomplishment feel important. It doesn't make it feel like it's just him against all of Berk for his stance on the dragons. So having some Vikings who isn't as hard-headed as the older ones on his side sets up that maybe there can be hope for the rest of Vikings to change after all. This same logic also applies to Astrid, who actively suspicious of Hiccup because there's no way that someone like him could improve so quickly without help. Hiccup and Astrid's relationship is very slow, and I think a natural growth as Astrid starts to learn how harmless dragons can be. Having someone romantically interested in Hiccup is the perfect way to show how Hiccup's attempts to change the minds of Vikings matter. That and their dynamic towards the end is so wholesome. I like Astrid's running gag at showing affection. It's smaller moments like that that really help lighten the mood when we really need it. But on that note, I think that they didn't have any idea for what to do for humor in the movie. There are a lot of jokes that work when it comes to Vikings, along with Hiccup and Toothless, but any attempt at a joke outside of that is just a standard humor in a kid's movie.
Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.
I think that How to Train Your Dragon is something that cannot and should not be replicated. It's a movie that can definitely be recreated from a writing standpoint for sure, but trying to remake a core aspect of the movie that heightened it exponentially can only entail in my eyes. Not saying that it's not possible, they definitely have the technology and creativity to come close to reimagining the original, but then what would be the point? Why remake it at all if whatever you're going to make is just practically going to be a one-to-one of the original? Why try to fix something that isn't broken? My main gripe with live-action remakes is just the idea of what it's trying to be. Whether it be intentional or not, it's trying to tell you that this is the original's substitute. That this version will be better simply because it isn't animated. I genuinely thought that things like this would start to die out after the success of Del Toro's Pinocchio, something that was created for the sole purpose of showing that animation is a medium of filmmaking that shouldn't be substituted or downplayed, but here we are. Animation has shown time and time again that it can bring the beauty of filmmaking, with its vibrancy and its endless amounts of creativity and unique worlds that can't be told. This fantastical world of Vikings and dragons would not exist without animation. This gorgeous movie that uses the idea of soaring through the air to experience the beauty of our world wouldn't exist without animation. This hauntingly real story about the broken relationship between a father and son that is so well integrated within the film's world building wouldn't exist without animation. If this near-perfect movie can't exist without the advances of animation, then why should it be remade at all? The first How to Train Your Dragon movie is one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and that is why I would give this movie a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you all so much for watching. This is a movie series that I've been desperately wanting to talk about, and I think this is the perfect time to do so. If you liked the video, be sure to tell me what your thoughts are on the movie or my critique of it. Be sure to like and subscribe and support my Patreon in the description below so you get access to videos early, my private Discord server, and a bunch of other benefits for up to $6 a month. I'm your favorite vegetable cowboy, signing off.